the Coyote is something that I really want a record of. If this thing will actually even properly go on air. There we go. So you were saying the Christians have turned the devil into this punk-ass Wile E. Coyote character?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, because really, they say, like, oh, well, the devil, like, and I'm not saying all Christians, but, like, that particular type of Christian, the very, very, 6,000-year-old Earth types, it's like, oh, fossils aren't real, and you'll show them a fossil, and be like, oh, that was planted by the devil for scientists to find. It's like, well, you've taken this devil who's supposed to be, like, the ultimate evil, like, this ultimate sinister force, and he's like this punk-ass Wile E. Coyote, that's like pranking people out in the desert. He's like a college frat boy, and that's not scary to me. Sorry.
No, it's not.
Agreed.
But yeah, I personally have had a lot of fun going into Hangouts, and it's like, well, actually, the whole anthropomorphizing of the devil and making him an adversary of God didn't come along until the Second Temple period. And I go through my whole spiel, and at the end of the spiel, they're like, I disagree. With what?
If the devil did all that with the fossil record, that sucker's bloody brilliant because of the misleading evidence it gives scientists,
Well, it's a lot more evidence than this God character they're promoting left to try and validate his claim.
There's a very funny story I heard recently. There was a church, and it's kind of like how creationists demand equal time for their creationist bullshit and along with the actual science. Well, there's a story of a church that had a long-hour sermon against the devil, counteracting him, calling him evil, and then the preacher said, so we have equal time to hear the opposing position. Here comes the devil, and he's just in the next panel holding his paperwork, getting ready. Well, I find it to be funny. Really, it's funnier in the cartoon version as opposed to...
No, I get what you're saying. The preacher's up there talking about the devil, the devil, the devil, the devil. Now it's the devil's turn to speak, and the devil has the amount of paperwork with him. Man, I'll get to it.
Hey, Exiled. How you
Hey
doing,
guys,
Max?
can you hear me? You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I tried joining with this stupid tablet.
Yeah, there is also apparently a problem with the initial invites that I tried to send out, never getting to their destinations. So.
Yeah, I got invited to something, but I missed it.
Yeah, like I said, there was some kind of weird-ass fucking problem with that. A couple people got a notification that the event ended before it actually started, which is also equally fucked up.
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, I should check to make sure both streams are going concurrently, now that I think of it.
Catch any trolls yet?
On the main stream, on the 18-hour thing, yeah, I got one. Somebody going by Big Black Dick came in there to say, see Kyle, so I blocked them.
Yeah.
That went real far. It's like, oh, how nice for you, goodbye. And it's funny thing is, at the time, it's like, oh, there's one viewer, let's see who it is, and I see that, and I delete the name and block them, and then the one viewer went away. I'm like, oh, well, whatever.
It's going to be an interesting 18 days, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently. I just check it periodically to make sure the stream's still going, but let me double check that. Yep, still going just fine. All those unlisted videos being dug out of the shadows.
Oh, no, now it's saying it's live.
Yeah, this one is, yeah.
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 Interesting.
But even then, it's currently quote-unquote unlisted. It's only been shared with people that are already on my list.
Gotcha.
Because sometimes they want to see what the hell's going on before coming in, and I get that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just sticking with the in list for now, and whenever the hell this thing ends, I'm just going to tag it to the end of the insanely long shuffle. Let's see if we can actually get it to be the longest video on YouTube. That'd be funny.
That would be.
The current longest is like just under 600 minutes, and I only have 436 hours. Sorry, 500. Sorry, just under 600 hours rather, and I only have like 436 hours in the current playlist.
We can do it.
I suppose so.
Well, hell, we did 4.5 yesterday. It only felt like 2 hours.
Well, yeah, but at the same point, I could also sit there and just tag on like the role-playing crap or something on the end to pad out time. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I could talk Xbox and let me throw some of his shit in there just for the hell of it.
Wouldn't take much convincing, I don't think.
Yeah. But yeah, this seems to be a summer thing.
And he's arrived in BC, if you haven't heard.
Yeah, I mean,
No, Sokka moves, sorry. No.
going back to like the modern iteration of Christianity for a moment, though, I think the notion of having, this character that God created just to oppose him, because they're like, oh, no, but he rebelled. It's like, no, if he's God and he's omniscient and knows everything that's going to happen, he would have known he was going to rebel, so this would have been part of the plan anyway. So he did at that point create this character to oppose him in such a way that he would be drawing people away from worshiping him when worshiping him is the most important thing to him. Completely incoherent by the time you get to that. I mean, in Judaism, yeah, you have this Hasatan, that it's his job to test the faith of people. Not so that, I will now condemn you for, reject. No, it was just, this is how he tested people. It was, it was a test.
Failed.
And to me, the idea of testing somebody's faith is to see, either you're going to get closer to God in your understanding of it, or you're going to just get kind of stuck with a roadblock. And the goal is to get people so that they can get a better understanding. This makes sense to me. This part of the theology, Judaism, makes fucking sense to me. Then you have the Christians take over, and it goes to just, I don't get it anymore. It's fucked up.
I have a question.
There's so many parts of the faith-based framework that just don't make sense.
I have a question. Who issues the challenge to test your faith? Is it Peter or Paul?
They would have been acting in the role of the Hasatan, yes.
Okay, so
the Hasatan is the accuser. Lucifer is the king of Babylon. There are two references in there that they try to equate to this devil character. One of them is in, Isaiah and Ezekiel, I think, are the two different ones. One of them is a letter that's basically written or said to, I don't remember which, to the king of Tyre that's like, oh, you think you're so fucking great. Oh, you think you're in Eden, meaning in paradise. Blah, 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 blah. But since they say Eden there, clearly they're talking about the serpent, so they're talking about the devil. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, one of those guys' names.
King Hiram of Tyre and King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Thank you, Gav.
Well, who is Beelzebub?
Beelzebub is a rival
god.
No,
not Beelzebub, but Beelzebul.
Beelzebul, I don't remember that one.
It meant like Lord on high, and they changed it to Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies.
I don't know. I don't know, but Baal is just a rival god in the region.
A little bit of randomness there.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, when you're going through the Old Testament, there were other gods. Now, whether, it's like you have the God of Israel, then you have these gods of other nations, and it was God versus God, and Yahweh always kicked ass. Except for that one Iron Chariots thing. But.
The Iron Chariots thing was, now I'm trying to remember it.
And they went and they destroyed the men of the hills and the men of the this and the men of the that, but they could not defeat the men in the valleys because they had chariots of iron. But it's presented, the way the language is presented, it's like Yahweh couldn't help them defeat them.
I don't think it's any different than when Joshua was imprisoned by Pharaoh and God was said to be with him there.
Well, I mean, realistically, I think if you're going to approach this from a theological framework that isn't fucking retarded, then they were attributing their victories to the divine, much like we do with football games now. And that doesn't mean the divine was necessarily the one that was either commissioning the wars or providing the victories.
Oh, by the way,
I think this is just interpretation of the people at the time, and I don't think it's reasonable to put it on the, either the victory or the defeat on the, attributing that to actually being, well, the divine succeeded here and failed there. I don't think that's rational. The problem is when people are being literalistic about it, that's when the chariots are a big deal, and that's when I get to say, you're God's a fairy, it can't affect iron.
Oh, by the way, I'm really glad you brought this up because it's actually been the main part of my recent readings. It's called the 3 Philosophical Dialogues of St. Anselm, and he covers on truth, on the freedom of choice, and most germane, on the fall of the devil.
Okay.
Yeah. On truth, Anselm discusses what notion of truth is, and of course, being the good Christian theologian that he is, he says, well, what is the truth but God himself? And he kind of argues this from the truth being descriptive as well as normative. But the more interesting part is on freedom of choice. He actually says that even though God cannot sin, he's actually the most free being there is. And he rationalizes that by saying, well, consider this. If we understand free will as the ability to sin or as to not sin, well, yeah, I mean, that is kind of ridiculous, because then we'd say our God isn't free. But if we look at free will as instead the capacity to do the correct thing, then what has greater capacity to do the correct thing than that which always does the correct thing?
Well, there's already a huge problem with this whole thing.
What is it?
Which is that it's hinging on the notion that sin is that which is against God. Well, if God were to sin, he'd have to be doing something that's against himself, which makes that almost incoherent now, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
Well, yeah. So then if you say that he's always doing what's right, well, it's God that's determining what's right, because what's wrong would be against God. So it's kind of self-defining what right and wrong is based upon the divine, which kind of takes something away from it, don't you think? Because at that point, it's only good by fiat.
So here's kind of a good parallel. Anselm actually goes about this backwards rather than forwards. He doesn't define things a priori and say, this is what good is, it's whatever is in God's nature, and whatever contrary to that is just bad.
And
analytically and before the fact. Oh, am I good?
Yeah, you're good now. You're good now. You just paused for a moment. You went for a second.
Oh, sorry. So Anselm actually doesn't go from the top down. He doesn't just announce first that good is whatever God is, and therefore whatever God is not, that's just ridiculous. Rather, Anselm works his way up. He starts going with, first of all, particular truths, like propositional truth. What makes, so for example, it's true that the internal sum of a triangle has 180 degrees. So if you add up all the sums of any triangle, it's 180 degrees. So anytime you draw a triangle, which is a three-sided object, that's always going to be the sum that you're going to derive. Am I still good?
You're on the verge of pointlessness here, as far as I'm concerned.
Because a triangle is not a three-sided object.
So likewise, anytime it's not just descriptive; it's also normative. Because every time you draw,
hang on. What you're basically heading towards is that nature of God bullshit, right?
No, it's that it's not.
That if the nature of God is good, it's kind of like a triangle with three sides, right?
No, that's not what I'm going for.
I had to talk to my kid for a second, so I missed some of it.
Okay, so if I was just to define things just before the fact, so if I was just to say before any fact, if I was referencing a foot, and by foot I just meant book. But anytime I use the word foot, it just means book. Well, the term foot just is meaningless. It's only a semantic distinction. Just use the term book. That's what we all understand book means. But it's not that way when it comes to other notions of identity. Like, for example, water is H2O. There was a huge period of time where we didn't know water was H2O. We didn't know that it had this combination of elements. Yeah, we do know.
But you could still call water a foot if you so deemed.
Semantically speaking, yes, but it would be meaningless unless it...
It's the same semantic thing as with a triangle. What's your point, you know? I mean, there's the definition of the thing, which is, as is readily defined and as is readily understood, and then there are the varied terms we use to basically for the sake of linguistics.
Not necessarily, because there are some things we understand to be distinct in some way, shape, or form, but then through discoveries of more facts, we discover that they're identical.
You can say the chemical formula of water is H2O, but whether you call it water or call it something else, you know, like, for example, neige in the case of snow in French.
Yeah, but there are some...
It's still snow, it's just, you know, it's frozen H2O falling from the sky. It's snow, it's neige, it's Schley in Hebrew, apparently. I know I'm butchering that. But you have all these different words for it. When you're talking about the chemical formula for it, that, you know, it's H2O, you're talking something a little bit different. That's more universal.
Yeah, but my point is there was a time we didn't know that H2O meant water, or H2O was identical to water, just like there was a time when we didn't know where the morning star and the evening star were Venus. It was only through more facts that we were to discover them, and to say that these two are identical is not meaningless. It's to actually say something that we might think at one point is epistemically distinct, but now is kind of the same. Likewise, when it comes to understanding God as being the good, it is not necessarily meaningless, because we might understand the good and we might understand God to be two distinct things, but or God as the truth and God as He is as being two distinct things.
Hang on, wait, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off right there. All things good and evil were made by God in accordance to the Scripture. When a prophet speaks falsely, it is God who has deceived him.
All right.
Both scriptural references.
That is a scriptural reference. But just to make my point, but just to finish off my point, as long as the person constructs some kind of argument to deduce that indeed what is the truth, or in what is the good is identical to God, then the term is not meaningless.
But if the evil and the deception is also from and of God, then your whole God is wholly good and is incapable of evil or lying or this kind of stuff, which is usually promoted by these kind of apologetics, kind of falls apart.
All right, we can.
And I mean, logically, that would have to be the case.
Not necessarily. For what is good, and I would. No, well, and
no. Wait. Dial it back for a second. Because no, that doesn't have to be the case. Now, it's the same point if everything that is considered good or evil is technically the product of God's work. Then technically God is neither good nor evil, but we define these attributes to him because it's based upon our understanding of these actions. Now, whether you're going to say that it's good or bad in the long term is good only in that it fits the agenda of this character. Now, if that agenda is contrary to what we would know to be good or what any rational person would consider to be the good, well, then we may have a problem there because it's only good based upon his definition thereof.
So good and evil are not just definitional. I think that they are things in themselves. With regards to what is good and what is evil, God would be, God isn't a particular good. He isn't a particular truth, but rather the good.
Pause. You paused it.
Stupid cell phone.
Try again.
God is not a good or a truth, but God is the good. He is the truth. There's a distinction. To say a particular thing is good, for example, is just to say that it has goodness. But when we say God is the good or God is the truth, what we're saying is he is the universal.
Okay, so he is the good even when he is doing something that we would consider to be of the bad.
I would consider.
So if we would universally consider something to be bad, but it is of God because God is the good, then it would still be good, based upon that logic.
That sounds so fucked up.
So something is evil. To say something is evil is to say that something is a privation of the good. Something lacks good in a certain way. There's no such thing as, we're not dealing with Gnosticism. It's not pure dualities of goodness and evilness. Rather, evil exists as only a privation of the good, in the same way that if I were to cut my hand, that cut doesn't exist in itself. It only exists because there's a privation of skin there. Likewise, the only thing that an evil is a distorted good. When God says he creates...
No, when he says he creates evil, though, that's not creating good.
He is creating, when he creates evil, what he is doing is he is purveying a goodness, just to bring out an even greater goodness, as Aquinas would.
How is that coherent?
So drowning the entire population of the earth was good?
Yeah.
Because they're, so it's coherent. So it's coherent because they're not in dualities or negations. Evil is not the pure negation of good. There's two Latin terms that are very helpful.
Wait. Can I help you with this?
Sure.
It isn't that there's good and evil. It's more like light and shadow. When you have light, that's of the light being on. When you turn the light off, you don't say you have an absence of light. The light is merely off. That's Teal Swan, by the way. You don't fill the room with shadow. You don't fill it with evil or badness. You merely turn off the goodness. Is this kind of what you're arguing? Are you making a Teal Swan argument?
Yes, that's what I am.
Okay.
I don't know. I hear a lot of this stuff sometimes, and I'm thinking, well, if believing in God is so easy and His message is so simple, why do we have to go through all these mental gymnastics?
I don't know, man.
You know, I mean, I'm just white trash, trailer park white trash. I like things simple, and there is nothing simple about these conversations when they get to the point like where y'all go sometimes.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I noticed that Gav never really jumps into these, and I think that if I may, Gav, and feel free to give me flack on this, I think that the Jewish people have a somewhat different perspective of this God character.
Yeah.
In that, you know, God's sometimes a jerk, especially to his own people. I've heard the reference saying, I wish he'd choose somebody else. You know, this whole kind of thing. There's a certain degree of snark involved there. It's like, well, you know, this is how he does things, and they're not necessarily claiming that no matter what he does, it's necessarily good. I don't think I've heard that from anyone that's Jewish, per se. Now, they might think that he has a higher purpose behind it, but that doesn't make it necessarily good what's going on at the time.
Sometimes Gabriel reminds me of, oh gosh, I forgot. The guy from Italy.
Fabio.
Fabio. Sometimes Gabriel reminds me of Fabio. Like
Actually,
Fabio, he'll see it.
Hang on a second, though. Gav, was that a completely bad representation, or was that somewhere at least close to the right trajectory?
Definitely on the right trajectory.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
I don't expect to actually have it right, but I was trying to aim down the right course.
It's like Gabriel will do like Fabio, you know, sit there and not say much anything for a good while. He just listens, and all of a sudden you hear, "Oh, for a fuck's sake!" and then he straightens it all out. Sort of.
And I appreciate you not jumping in other people's shit, but I just basically I wanted to for a moment present the fact that, you know, it's not specifically the notion of the divine or the notion that there might be something out there. It's this all good, all truth iteration that I think is kind of bizarre. Because if you can move past this notion that, you know, it is the good, it is the truth, I think that's when you can start getting into, you know, the actual nuts and bolts of, well, then what is it? As opposed to making all these weird assumptions and just assigning traits that don't necessarily even fit the character.
Right.
There are times that I kind of have. This goes back to my youth. I'm kind of like, okay, so we're kind of like the ant farm of the divine. Okay, I hope we're entertaining it. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if that's the way that things were, it would make more sense than the Christian angle, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's like he basically created us to be a TV station. I'm cool with that. That makes sense. More so than he is all good and he wants you to be okay.
It's like, why did God create humans? Because the angels weren't entertaining enough.
Yeah, you know, you spend all of eternity in a void and isolation, you're going to get bored.
It reminds me of a sci-fi story I once read. I can't remember the name of it, but these creatures who would get high off of oregano created the universe, or one wayward kid created our universe, and they decided to just turn Earth into a reality show.
Yeah. Hang on. Okay, I guess he wasn't saying anything important. He didn't bother to answer when I asked him what he was wanting. Okay, whatever. I guess he answered whatever question he might have is now no.
I wasn't going to give you a question. I was figuring out what it was about today.
It would be ask you a question, not give you a question.
Yeah, but,
No.
basically, when I came in here, I was about to do something, and then
No, that's good. You're distracted. Okay.
and then I saw...
I walked into the room and there was a picture on a computer and I got confused. Okay, got it.
No,
Pearl.
something
Just
weird.
actually, I will be right back.
Oh, okay.
I will argue with Epi again in a moment.
Hey, I do anything to help you get some traffic.
Oh, this one's pre-recorded. This won't have traffic. By the time this thing's done, I'm just going to tag it onto the end of the 18-day broadcast.
Awesome.
I'm just watching Heavy Hauler make paper airplanes.
No, I'm trying to hide the fact that this is a post office box.
Okay,
I'm remailing. I'm using a used post office thingy to ship something.
Can you turn them inside out?
Now you tell me.
Okay, that's awesome.
See, it's all covered in stuff
Okay, yeah.
to hide all the red stripes.
I'm just not sure how the mailbox, the post office boxes were put together.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when I mail stuff, I get boxes that you can pop the flaps and fold them flat.
Yeah.
So what I do then is I fold them in reverse, and I get a brown box with no markings on it.
Well, actually, you can't do it with this because it's got something printed on the inside of the box.
Okay.
I don't know what it says right there, but there's something there, yeah.
Okay. Because I was using boxes from work, so they usually had markings on them, like for whatever product it was in the box.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When you try and mail that, well, that could flag it at customs. So by inverting the box, it's now just brown.
Well, see, I try not to mail out of the country on the eBay.
Well,
stuff.
no, for me it was just easier this way. It's a
Oh,
brown
yeah,
box.
yeah.
When it shows up at someone's house, it's a brown box. There's no markings on it.
Or brown paper wrap.
Or brown paper. Well, that looks like pornography now, but when someone's delivering a brown wrap, but yeah.
In all fairness, is there anything that can't look like pornography if you try hard enough?
Well, generally when you wrap it in brown paper, and it's a box or like a very unmarked, suspiciously unmarked envelope.
I suppose that doesn't help, yeah.
Thing is, what exactly is pornography? It's very subjective, isn't it?
Really, whatever somebody thinks is in that box and you don't want them to know about and they question you, and you have to dodge.
Well, the thing is, pornography can be something that isn't even actually visible on a stream, that you have to get a magnifying glass out to go and say, I think it might be, I don't know. If it gets to that point, you have a problem. But anyway.
I remember as a kid, if you looked just right at two rocks, you could make something happen.
Ooh.
Hey, you never went to a tree and looked for knots?
I didn't get the reference.
Actually, I kind of like that. Sorry, some of the stuff that Gav's putting on the right is...
Yeah.
Oh, for those at home who are watching at some predetermined future date, Heathens was actually reading stuff that was printed in the side of the Google bar. He's not referring to looking for knots in trees.
What? Huh?
Oh.
Here we go. The quote is, humanity is a reflection of the divine. If you take the position that humans are the only animal made in the image of the divine, you have to flesh out what that means. Does it make more sense that humans are copies of God and that God is essentially a big man in the sky, or does it make more sense that being created by the divine image means that we have the distinction in having the ability to make moral choices, which, I think that makes more sense. It is more about the moral choices. Actually, I'm always making the argument when it goes back to that whole thing of the tree, that the tree is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the whole point of judgment coming after eating from that is that you can't be held accountable for what you do that's right or wrong until you understand the distinction and the difference between the two.
And that's why you're told not to go eat from it.
And I'm going to mute Heavy for a second because I don't know if he's the one the wind is coming from.
Hang on.
Maybe it's coming from me because I'm happy right now.
No, I'm seeing a green dot on Heavy, so I think it might be.
Yeah, that's me. It's probably my tape. I'll go ahead and...
I can't be sure. I just hear what sounds like wind. Oh, yep, it was Heavy. Cool.
Oh, it's this fan in the background there.
Now, I fairly recently got in a rather heated argument in one of St. Tommy's, one of his hangouts, with this one guy that's, One Way something or other?
One Way Apologetics.
One Way Apologetics, yeah. And I was going back and forth with him, and he is, among other things, a pre-supper and frankly kind of a pedantic twat. Which, you know, I don't generally throw those words together, but it's, in his case I will. Actually, sorry, after Pumpkin was in the other day, I'm going to have to say twat, because apparently that's the correct pronunciation. Leave it to the Irish. But in any case, oh God, I was going back and forth with him for a while, and it was hilarious, because, you know, I have my own notion of the divine. Now, with a lot of people, when they go through the deconversion process, you go through and you can watch video after video, and everyone hits at one point. This point in almost everyone, at least, this point in their deconversion, that they have this incredibly beautiful and grand notion of what the divine could be. But at the same point, it's jello in that, you know, you can't really pin it down. It's this vague thing. It's just this understanding. And whenever they try to convey this to a theist, they get beaten down because, of course, this doesn't match with the book. And I sat there and I presented that, and I said, you know, if you're sitting there claiming that there's some kind of divine thing out there, whether you want to call it God or something else, and all these people that are, you know, going out there and trying to seek God, so to speak, to figure out what it is, are coming to the same conclusion, and it disagrees with your book, what does that tell you? And he said, well, it doesn't tell me anything. I'm like, what? What do you mean it doesn't tell you anything? I said, mightn't they be right and you be wrong? Oh, no, because the Bible says. I'm like, oh, dude, you've so fucking missed the boat.
That's kind of like when somebody says, well, everywhere I go, people, I get into arguments with people, and nobody likes me, everybody hates me, and on and on and on. And then you try to point out to them, dude, did you ever think it was you and not all these hundreds of people you're accusing of hating you?
And but that's kind of the thing is, I think that in the majority of cases, what, so to speak, pushes people over from that kind of, well, I'm trying to understand what this notion of the divine is, to, fuck you, I'm an atheist, or more so in the case of anti-theists. I think it's the Christians bashing on them for trying to come onto a better understanding of what the divine could be. And that kind of saddens me, because usually people come out the other end, I'm a fucking anti-theist, yada, yada, yada. I'm not an anti-theist. I just think it's kind of silly.
Mm.
You know, it's just like, okay, you believe in stuff that I think is kind of ridiculous, and that's me speaking honestly. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I think it's based upon, you know, somebody else's understanding of the divine and not your own. And that's where it frustrates me, because, you know, if there is something that could truly be considered divine, fine, whatever. I just don't think it matches with any of the religious teachings.
Well,
and most people cannot allow themselves to use that as the starting point for a conversation. Most people just can't do that, because immediately, no, it doesn't matter what your notion of the divine might be, I've got this book. That isn't even their understanding, it's somebody else's understanding that they're promoting.
What's the big deal with it being someone else's understanding? I mean, theoretically, people can have, as long as it's true, or as long as they believe it's true, and as long as they could support it. I really don't care if they came up with it themselves, or if they were looking to somebody else for it. Isn't that what we should be testing, not
no.
uniqueness?
I think there is a significant difference here, because what the divine is seems to have a different meaning to everyone. And the divine, if there is such a thing, and I on some levels think that there is, although I wouldn't hang the label God on it, I think there is something that could be considered divine. Whether that's something that's within us or part of us or outside of us doesn't matter at that point. But it seems to mean something different and present itself differently to every single one of us. So if that's the case, and if it is tailoring whatever message it has to every person, just like it seems to have for every culture throughout history, perhaps you should listen to what it's saying to you instead of what it spoke to people 2,000 years ago in a different culture that's no longer relevant to who you are today.
I've always liked one definition of the divine, and one God is. And please stop me if I'm starting to pause, because I think my cell phone is crapping out on me.
Yeah, you just did for a moment, but continue. You seem okay for the moment.
Okay. Even though it's not the term I came up with myself, it's one I like using because not only is it a definition, it's a prayer. God is that which none greater can exist. Whenever I hear that, whenever I call God that, not only am I trying to get something across to other people, but it's kind of like the same feeling in my heart when I pray. It gives me some
But
kind of
is your understanding or interpretation of what greatness is the same as everyone else's?
Let's see. It would not be I would probably I'd use the same sound, but it wouldn't be. I guess people would have a different conception of what greatness would be going into it. But
Yeah.
I use it in one sense and one sense only.
But here's the thing, though. If everyone's going to have their own notion of what greatness is, and whatever this is, so to speak, it has to communicate to you what it means by greatness, or what greatness is. It would have to convey that to you personally in a way that you would understand it. It's, somebody else, instead of saying, okay, according to Bob, greatness means this. Well, you might disagree with Bob, and if he's promoting that this thing that's supposedly, the greatest yada 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 is something based upon his understanding of greatness, it's not necessarily going to coincide with your understanding of greatness.
Yeah, but words have usages, not truthful answers.
But what I'm saying is, it's a matter of how one sees this quality of greatness. And this is why I'm saying the divine would theoretically have to communicate to everyone individually so that they understand what it is and what it means for and to them.
For anyone who has a notion of the divine, or something that they ultimize generally, if you were to ask them, is there anything greater than your notion of the divine? They'd probably say no. Granted, they might have actions which might be a bit inconsistent with that, but people who generally believe in some notion of the divine have a tendency to ultimize it or make it so grandiose that it's something that they would not, even though they might have a different idea of what greatness is, it's something that they wouldn't want to take away from it.
But at the same point, in my notion of the divine is not all good.
The divine is not all good.
No.
Then is it is it all evil then?
No, it's simply all.
I happen to think that the divine is greater than the divine plus all. Than the divine plus all else.
What?
Sorry.
Is it greater than the sum of all things?
Yep.
Shadow said a deepity.
Yeah, I do that all the damn time.
So, remember the parable of the burning bush?
Yeah.
Or the story of the burning bush?
Yeah. She was not having a good day, let me tell you.
The one, but for the audience, the one that's being referred to is the one with Moses.
Oh, there is no audience, we're just free recording.
Oh, right.
Only the lights have access to it.
And I go through that story every day.
So how does an antelope become a lion?
It doesn't.
By the lion? Oh, by being eaten by the lion. That's the.
Paranor, I saw you talking, but I didn't hear anything.
Oh, right. The antelope becomes a lion by being eaten by one.
No. By the nature of the antelope does not change by being eaten.
It's now in the lion's gastral intestines ripped apart. It looks very much unlike it did alive.
It is no longer an antelope. Its nature of the antelope doesn't change. It ceases to be an antelope.
Yeah.
And it doesn't become what eats it. Now, you could say that it becomes a part of what eats it, but that's a different matter. It has lost the quality of antelopeness.
Yeah, but the whole point is
and the lion doesn't gain the quality of antelopeness either.
But when a finite meets a greater finite, or a sum meets a greater sum in this kind of particular case, one gets devoured by the other. One nature is consumed by the other. Yet, at the same time, when I think of God and the parable of the burning bush, we have an instance where one such nature, the tree, is burning with fire, yet isn't being consumed by the fire. Likewise, and this is supposed to be an image of God, likewise I consider God to be greater than the sum of all things, or the sum of all finite things, because God doesn't consume the finite, but rather God exemplifies it. This is what makes
you're
God
assuming that I'm referencing things that are, when I say the all, you're actually acting like I'm referencing things that are finite only.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be including space-time in that as well. You know, the sum of all things, material, immaterial, and otherwise. But and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the all. Now, I don't think the all must be necessarily good or evil. It's merely all. I think adding the caveat of must be only the good is putting a limitation on something for which there should be no limitations.
But I don't consider evil to be a limit. Not doing evil to be a limitation. I actually would consider that evil itself is something that. To say that God is good is to say that He's infinite. I think that to attribute any kind of evil is to attribute some kind of finiteness to the infinite.
What? I know I lost part of that, but what?
Oh, sorry.
What's that in Southern English?
Yeah.
To put it in plain English, evil is not to say something cannot do. To say that something is capable of evil, it's just that something is imperfect. It's to say that something has a lacking. It's not.
I disagree because a perfect virus would just be better at killing people.
Yep.
And we certainly wouldn't claim that that is good, unless you're the virus.
Well, I would definitely say this. Exists than a non-existent virus. It's better at doing it. Like if we have pretend viruses, those aren't going to do any good.
Hold on, Max. I have to ask Gabriel here a question. Okay, I understand the lion kills antelope, and dentist kills lion. But how does antelope kill dentist?
He doesn't. That poor son of a bitch loses no matter what he does.
Oh, okay. So you just never pick dentist then?
I guess.
I mean, the thing is, the whole notion of things like good and bad, good and evil, however we want to parse that out, is entirely a human-made construct. We define what is good based upon our viewpoint, both individually, culturally, and otherwise. The same with evil, the same with morality, and all these other things. These are ultimately human definitions. Now, at the same point, if something were divine, I don't think it would need to comport with our definitions of either, because there is no objective good or objective evil or even objective right and wrong. I don't think there are any of these things, and I don't think that if something is truly divine that it needs to necessarily be bound by these things. Now, granted, what I tend to refer to as divine, from a human standpoint, would be the best that we can achieve, the best within each of us, that kind of thing. But at the same point, I don't think that which would be, quote-unquote, the divine itself would necessarily have to comport with what we define as being good and evil.
So I think there's a bit of a confusion between something's definition and what something is in itself. When we use definitions, they're usages. They're just tools of meaningful communication between us. When it comes to understanding something when it comes to understanding something in itself, though, what I would say is we kind of have either empirical access or we have kind of rational access. And I think either one suffice to get you to some sort of objectivity. I mean, if everything was subjective in a sense, wouldn't things like science, mathematics, any kind of discipline where we're trying to get knowledge, wouldn't they all just be arbitrary?
No. What I'm saying is things like our varied valuations, whether it be morality or the notions of good or evil and what have you, these can only be approached from a subjective framework. Whether a rock exists or not is not something that is approached by a subjective framework. There's a difference there. I'm talking about the things that, for example, there isn't an object that this object is evil. And wherever you see this object, what you're looking at is evil. It is not an physical object. There is no actual literal evil. This is just a value judgment, much like with right and wrong, etc. These are value judgments by us, and how we view different these varied things is not only based upon the individual, but our societal evolution and what have you in terms of how we figure things out. And I hate to be the one to bring up the rape scenario that always seems to fucking come up in these that I can't stand on that basis.
Let's not do the rape scenario.
But no, wait, trust me on this one.
Okay.
But the simple fact of the matter is, well, you know, there are people that will claim this is something that we know is objectively wrong. Back in the 70s, it was still completely legal within our society that if somebody was divorcing their wife, they could break into the house because they still owned it, so they weren't breaking in. There was nothing wrong with that. And they could still have sex with the woman that they were divorcing because they were still technically married. So our value judgments and how we treat these things does change on a societal as well as individual level. Because now we look at things like that and think that this would be absolutely horrendous. And I think things like these need to be able to change. We need to be able to refine them and understand them better. So, I mean, just simply say the good or the evil or what have you, this is going to be based upon a value judgment based upon the culture, society, tribe, etc. that you come from.
Right. So when I tend to think of good and evil, I kind of like to use the analogy of kind of gravity. So gravity is something that we can't just hold in our hand and say, here's a bunch of gravity for you. Rather, we understand gravity by knowing its effects, and even the nature.
Actually, I'd have to say that's a bad analogy because gravity is tied directly to mass, so you can hold mass in your hand, therefore you can hold gravity.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's my point. I'm going on to say that people understood gravity and Newtonian science to be its own immaterial force. However,
you can measure it using things that are objective measurements. There is no objective way to weigh. This is why I said it's not a physical thing. There's no objective way to weigh good or evil. You can't physically. There's no actual real metric to weigh it.
I'll get to a metric. But I just want to establish. what it is I'm speaking of first. And so in Newtonian physics, the notion of gravity was an immaterial force that just acted in the universe. However, since then we've kind of learned we were dead wrong about that. Gravity is actually a property of space-time, and it's a property of mass, as you were saying, Paranor. Now, we can actually come up with a way to measure gravity considering our more Einsteinian model of gravity. But just to go to your example, Shadow, likewise, whenever I would say that good and evil are likewise properties of human beings. I would say that human beings themselves can be analogized like a watch. How do you know when a watch is good? Well, if I had a watch that always ran slow or always ran fast or was stopped and never worked, and it never kept time, that's a shitty watch because the function or the end or the purpose of a watch is to keep time. Likewise, the end of human nature, knowing what human nature is the exemplification of our essential properties. Man is a rational animal, a social animal, upon other things that mean you can go back and forth on. Likewise, I think when human beings exemplify these properties and act in accord with them, they are enacting goodness. Whenever there's a pervasion of such a thing, that's an instantiation of badness. Likewise, when we go to each and every action and virtue, I think that can be a measurement. So, on one hand, the purpose is kind of the meta-determining force, and the action, as we analyze it as being good or bad, is the normative analysis. That's what we ought to do, all things considered.
There is no metric still.
Something is good. Well,
that's not providing an actual metric. The
so
thing
you want
if there was an actual metric that you could, so to speak, weigh or measure the quality of goodness, the amount of goodness. You know, I'm not talking an objective unit of measure. Then we wouldn't have the problems we do with all these different societies. I mean, right now it's the argument as to which society is right, which view is wrong, and this and that, and all these struggles going back and forth. You can't weigh them against each other. You can't say, haha, we have this metric, and this evil is 3 inches, and this evil is 8 inches. You can't do that.
So when we're talking about metrics, we're talking about normative ethics. So there are three schools to normative ethics. There is utilitarianism, or actually consequentialism more broader, but the notion is you can actually construct, based on the consequences, some kind of calculus. Then again, there's the deontologists who think that you can actually measure something through duty through duty or obligation. That's what's the determining force of whether or not we are obliged to do something or not. And that's something. And of course, you have one example is Immanuel Kant's you have Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative.
Hang on, I've got to make the joke in this side. Gabriel just made a comment. I'll show you my 8-inch evil. No, please don't. We already had somebody try to do that on the other stream. I've had one channel in trouble for it.
Oh, wow.
Had to make the joke while I could.
All right. No worries. So we have Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, and Immanuel Kant says we can actually measure what's good or evil by seeing if we can universalize it and seeing if it would be rational or not to accept it. So, for example, the main one is lying. If you permit lying, for yourself, then you have to permit lying to everybody to remain logically consistent. But if you permit lying to everybody, that kind of defeats any purpose of lying or any utility of lying. Then why bother even lying at all? It would be more, considering that your desires, it would be far more of an imperative for you to just tell the truth all the time on pain of irrationality.
Okay,
and then,
but wait. In terms of this particular metric, now Immanuel Kant, I assume, was applying this metric, right?
Yep. Yeah,
and
Immanuel
how many
Kant.
things was he wrong about using this metric? Thus, I'm just indicating it's an unreliable metric. Obviously, our view of right and wrong, etc., has changed vastly since his era.
Right. So what I would
so it's not a good metric to begin with.
So just because I would disagree with the metric doesn't in itself invalidate it. All it means is that there's a
what I'm saying is, it's not.
argument.
You can't use this to get to objective good and evil. You can't get your 8 inches of evil through it.
All I'm saying is that there have been devised metrics or attempted metrics. Whether or not they're successful is irrelevant. The point is you can't. It's been attempts have been made, and attempts will be made. It's
a broken watch.
And the third one is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is the notion that something is good or bad if it breeds good virtues or characters in somebody else. And this is my idea.
Yeah, ethics, good virtues and what have you is also a metric based upon this idea of good and evil. You sitting there saying, well, we're going to decide that this is a good quality, and if it breeds this good quality, then we're going to call it good. Huh?
So you define good. So this is the normative level, and I define good on the meta level. So when I say something is good, I'm saying that it is something which exemplifies and is in tune with essential human nature, or the purposes or ends of human nature. And when something is bad, it negates it. It works against it. It stops it in some way.
Well, hang on, though, because aggressiveness and violence is also, whether we like it or not, part of human nature.
And sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's bad. It depends on how we implore it. So for example, in self-defense, I want to get aggressive.
Wait a minute. Before we go any further with this, I've got a question for you.
Right.
There are the varied schools of thought. Man is inherently good, but society corrupts. Man is inherently evil, or man is neither good nor evil. Which do you go with?
I go with the notion that man is evil inherently. Actually, I wouldn't say evil inherently. I would say, I would say that. But can I clarify what I mean by evil?
But wouldn't that make the nature of man then not part of this goodness scenario?
Nope, because because my definition of evil is not contrary to goodness. Rather, as I said before, evil is a pervasion, a failure of human nature. Human nature is distorted, but it doesn't necessarily mean that human nature is incapable of goodness or good actions. It's that it just has a tendency not to
I'm not saying that you are saying that. What I'm saying is that if you're approaching this from the notion that man is inherently evil, well, then that being human nature, if you're saying that good is what comports with human nature and human nature is inherently evil, you see where I'm going with this?
I see where you're going with this, and could I perhaps posit a fourth option then to describe my position?
Go for it.
The fourth option is a man is inherently good, but has within him a great tendency for evil.
Okay.
I posit another option.
That's closer to society corrupts, but whatever. I'm sure we can posit 1,000 options, but go ahead, Para.
All right.
Man is, and everything else is just our desires.
Oh, that would be man is neither good nor evil.
Yeah.
That kind of fall into that category. That's the one that That's the one that I line up more with, is the notion that man is neither good nor evil. That some people are just jerks, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, now see how simple that was. I like simple.
So why could you have not said that 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, well.
Because we love to hear Max go on.
But, I mean, that's the kind of thing is I don't think man, by definition, is either good or evil. And I don't think good or evil actually exists other than as we've defined it. We declare things to be good or evil. We declare things to be right or wrong. And this is how we build society and whatnot. But I don't think that there's a tangible metric or that these are like literal things. I think they're just human constructs.
Evil is a term like beauty in my mind. And I hate to say it to some people, pure evil is a beautiful thing.
I don't even know what pure evil is.
Well, nobody does, I think.
No.
Then how do you know it's beautiful?
Then same metric. It's all subjective, man.
No, the point is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so is evil, I think, is where he was going with it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I can't really buy into the notion that evil is subjective. That good and evil are just subjective categories for things we like and dislike. It strikes me as, well...
Well, actually, I think it's more... I think like and dislike is simple. I think that's way oversimplification.
Strong dislike and strong dislike. Intense like and intense dislike.
No, not even that. I don't think it's simply a matter of that, because we don't necessarily label something as good or evil because we like it. For that matter, there are plenty of things that people like that even though they might enjoy it or get pleasure out of it, they might not necessarily consider it to be good. This can be actually shown very clearly through a lot of things pertaining to Christianity, where there are many people that think, okay, I like doing, I enjoy having my affair, but it's not right. They don't consider that to be good.
That's actually one of the arguments. That's actually one of the arguments I make against subjective good and evil. I honestly think it's just really counter to. I think it is just highly counter to our experiences. It's not like, to me, it can't be a preference. It can't just be subjective in that sense. I mean, it strikes me as very counterintuitive. When I say something is evil, I say it because it kind of goes with my experience. When I hear stories of women being beaten by their abusive husbands, like, there's something in me that is really intensified. It's not something I'd react to if it was just, well, some people prefer chocolate, some people prefer vanilla.
Well, no. The majority of how people do their valuations of good and evil, I think, is more geared to their individual sense of empathy.
I was going to bring up, think about psychotics, Max. Not all psychotics, and very few of them, are murderous assholes, right? A lot of them will just emulate and not interfere because it's, they decide it's none of their business.
Yeah,
but
apathy.
The thing is, apathy. But some psychotics, just like some non-psychotics, have some sort of hankering for a bit of the old ultra-violence and sipping your opium-laced milk.
It is possible that I simply can't get on board with this notion of good and evil because I wasn't born with this proverbial moral compass. I didn't start off with empathy. This is a learned trait for me, as was morality. So, I didn't start off with this notion of this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is evil. I started off with, well, I don't care. And I had to learn to care.
seemed like we had a conversation about that empathy was at the heart of a lot of morality.
Yeah, it really
People
is.
that are very immoral and killers or whatever, they have no empathy for other people.
Yeah.
And that sounds like, I mean, that pretty much sums it up in a way. For me, it's easier to get a hold of, and kind of understand.
And it's actually measurable.
But why should we have? Wait. Well, ignoring that. How?
Oh, hang on.
But
Ignoring
but this-
that,
but then-
no.
Wait. Let me jump in with one more thing.
I had another point. I had another point to bring up, and I just thought addressing Paranor's point would just
Go.
be okay. My whole point was, who ought we be empathetic to? Who's worthy of empathy?
Well, that's a subjective thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like morality, just like beauty, it's a very subjective thing, especially wording it like that. I mean, who is worthy? Who's unworthy?
Well, now I'm going to jump back to, a story from my... Wait, I'll wait for him to jump back in. I think that was his tablet. He might have lost power. That happens.
Yeah, and a lot of these conversations seem like, especially people that do the philosophical stuff and biblical thing, it's like they want to complicate it so damn much, when in a lot of ways it's so damn simple.
Well,
It is.
the thing is, the notion of right and wrong, I think, was best encapsulated by my daughter at the age of, I think, 6, 7, maybe. And I turned to her and I said, I turned to my daughter and I said, do you need somebody to tell you that hurting somebody is wrong? And she says, no. I said, why? She said, because that's just mean. And I think that really sums up, human morality. Don't do that which is mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and unlike what Max was saying, about or not being able to quantify, good and evil and that sort of thing, you can quantify psychotics and empathy, lack thereof. You can even measure personal space.
I would tend to agree, Gav. I do like Max. I've enjoyed Epi since I first started talking to him in Park, because I can go back and forth with his stuff, and he never does the religitard. I am going to sit there and run to this book and start screaming at you. He never goes there, and on that level, I respect him. But there are sometimes I just want to grab him by the throat and shake him.
I feel the same way. I've known Max. You guys call, a lot of people call him Epi. I haven't known him that long, but I like him. And I've said so before.
But yeah, sometimes I just want to choke the shit out of him and say, "Listen, you're not getting it," and I think it's deliberate. But it's.
All right, I think Heavy's sending us a message here.
What is this? Return to sender? What?
It says fragile, handle with care.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's one of the Christians that knows how to brain. Yeah, I have an appreciation for that,
Well,
too, I gotta say.
at least Epi, or Max as we call him here, hasn't ever brought up creationism or flat Earth or any of the crazy crap.
Yeah. I mean, I do think he's worthy of some respect, and I try to give him some, but at the same point, he's one of my favorite sparring partners because I can spar with him, and he never pulls shit like that one-way asshole did the other day. One-way apologetics, and it's, I'm sitting there, I present the case, all these people are coming to this notion, this very, pretty much the same notion of what the divine is. And, I mean, you sit there and you talk to them, and there was this one occasion I was at a hangout, and Matt Bell was there and a bunch of other people, and there's this one guy that came in there, and he was very much the anti-theist, and he was in constant attack mode. And I made this statement, and he goes, "Wait a minute, what did you just say?" And I repeated it. I said, over the course of deconversion, there's this point that most people reach where they have this, so to speak, grander notion of what the divine could be. And the guy actually completely broke character from that angry anti-atheist that we all hear about. And he says, "Yeah, I remember when I was going through that time period and was about to speak to it." And then Matt Bell immediately jumps in with, "It doesn't matter what you think God is. God is simply what he is, regardless of what you might want." And at that point, the game was on, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to shut up and let him scream at Bell some more. There was a brief moment we could have had a sane conversation, and then, Christian dogma steps in and kicks everyone in the nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you went, Bell.
So, I pose this like, could it be perhaps that all these people that are independently seeking and coming to the same conclusion might be right? And no, because of the book. And my wife, the theist, is laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, like we were talking about last shuffle, all about authority.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. Okay. You want to go out again, puppy? Really? Okay. I'll go to let the pup out. But yeah, I mean, one of these days, I keep promising this to myself, and it's something that's been on my to-do list since I met Gav. But one of these days, I'm going to set a hangout, just me and him, fireside chat style, and just talk about his views of, the divine, basically. Just to get
that would be cool.
Just to get something different than what we're hearing all the fucking time. No judgment, no bullshit. Just what do you think?
It'd be epic.
I think that'd be a great special event at some point. Because all we ever hear is the damn Christians, and they're always, well, the Jews this and the Jews that. And it's like, shut up. How about you actually talk to one sometime?
Oh, yeah, I love that. The Jews believe this, the Jews believe that. It's like, well, how many did you talk to? None. I got this off of,
Yeah. Same thing happens to atheists.
Yeah, I got this out of a pamphlet my church published. So, yeah, that's a real hard data point I'm looking for.
Yeah. Back to a book or pseudo-authority.
What's that, who's that asswipe that publishes those pamphlets?
Chick Track.
Yeah. The one on how about like Jews and Judaism is basically like Jews don't want to believe in Jesus because then they'd have to admit that they killed Jesus. I was like, yeah, that's why we don't believe in Jesus. Keep telling yourself that.
It's not that you don't like stale crackers.
Well, I mean, the thing that gets me is, if, the whole thing that this was God's divine plan, that Jesus was going to come down to be, then the Jews didn't have a choice in the matter, so shut the fuck up. And if it's such a great thing that Jesus was crucified for everyone's sin, then you should be sitting there sucking the Jewish dick to thank them.
Thank you.
The uncircumcised bitch.
You got it.
The big 8-inch.
Yep, that 8-inch evil. I mean, realistically, if this is supposed to be such a grand thing, why are you persecuting Jews over it? Fuck off.
Yeah.
You should be thanking them. What the hell? This
I
makes
think
no
they just-
sense.
I think they hate on the Jews because they couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, well, I mean, there is a line in the Bible where Jesus is saying, "If I had an army, none of this would be happening."
Onward,
It's like,
first
okay,
students of
there's
old.
your Prince of Peace for you guys.
What a dick.
Well, I've argued with Arcane about this too in the past, and who's the other one? All for his
glory. Yeah,
that other failed abortion on here. And about how he's like, and they're like, oh, don't you dare talk about Christian anti-Semitism. I'm like, that's not even like a real thing. That's all left-wing propaganda. I was like, it comes straight out of your Bible. A lot, Martin Luther and all of the early church fathers didn't get these anti-Jewish ideas in a vacuum. They come directly out of the New Testament. Like in the book of John, where we're referred to as devils and the sons of devils, or in 2 Thessalonians 2, where Paul calls the Jews the murderer of our Lord and that they are hostile to all men.
Oh, holy crap! Yeah, that whole thing with your father's the devil thing. I've brought that up so many times, and I didn't even realize it was in there until E-Man pointed it out to try and claim that all atheists are the devil. And I looked at the line, and I'm like, no, this is referring to, it's actually calling Abraham the devil, technically speaking, in that phrase, in the way that it's parsed out there. And
Right.
it's actually saying your father Abraham is the devil, is what it's saying. Now maybe now you can sit there and try and read into it, eisegete however you want, or exegete if you want to claim that that's what you're doing. That no, what this really means is that they're following what they're claiming is Abraham's teachings instead of that of God or whatever. I don't know how the hell they justify it, but I mean, it's one of those things. They can sit there and do whatever they want, but in that text, they're calling Abraham the frickin' devil, and by extension, calling the Jews the Jews they're speaking to, the sons of the devil.
Yeah, I know. That verse is the reason why all the little Catholic kids in my neighborhood would actually run around asking me if I had horns.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not kidding.
No, I know you're
No,
not.
I believe you. But
Trust
I mean,
me,
also,
I've had.
you have the long history of France with the Jews being not only simply ostracized, but long dark history there, and I don't know the full details, but I've read into some of it, and it
Well,
was
the thing
fucking
is,
horrid.
in France, you can't blame it all on Christianity, though, because even the French secularists are fairly anti-Semitic, like, especially like the right wing, like the Gaullists, like the people, like the really hardcore Charles de Gaulle followers.
We have some of those in Quebec. Holy shit.
Yeah, it always amuses me when somebody's sitting there going around talking about the Articles of Zion. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, that's a well-known forgery from Russia. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a question for you. The British Israelites, what's the spiel there?
Oh, those are like those black Israelites. They think that like British people are the real, the true, really the Jewish people, and like the Victorian monarchy is like the same thing as the Davidic monarchy or whatever. It's the same bunch of crap, just with white people.
It's a bunch of people trying to claim they're the chosen ones.
Yeah.
More stupid shit.
I remember getting in arguments with my grandmother. I can't really remember them, but she subscribed to the British Israel stuff. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of one of those things. You have all these different groups that want to try and claim some lineage to whatever the fuck to try and give themselves more credence. And you see this in the damn New Agers, too. One of the things that amuses me, though, is how much they lean on this character Melchizedek. And recently, we'll talk with a Christian, they actually said that there is one offhand reference to the Order of Melchizedek or something like this. But as far as I'm aware, the character Melchizedek in terms of the scripture is just some dude that Saul had lunch with, or something like that.
It's Kabbalistic spook shit.
Yeah.
It's basically. I wish I. Actually, I don't. I don't want to delve into that. It's a whole. You think New Agers can be annoying? It's the people who think that they know what Kabbalah is.
That's where everyone in Hollywood goes and gets a bracelet.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, the thing is, there is actually a Kabbalah page on YouTube that's teaching about Kabbalah, and I'm like, okay, well, what is this stuff? It's something that I never technically studied. I knew somebody that was into it, so when I reference the things that I've looked into, I will reference it because I had some conversations with a friend that was very much into it, but that's the extent of it. I don't really know much of jack about it.
Well,
Yeah,
what was
Jewish
it?
mysticism.
The 950 steps back to God or something.
Well, no. But I was listening to this, and they're talking about the varied levels of awakening or some shit like this. I don't remember what it was. And it's like, there's like however many it was. And once you reach this, there's nothing beyond that. I'm like, and this is an absolute. Fuck you. And that's the thing, is because they're still using these absolutes. We know everything of the supernatural kind of framework, and whenever somebody does that, I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah, and it's I find Kabbalah to be an irritating subject for two reasons. One of those reasons is most of the people who claim to follow it know nothing about it. It's like Wicca. It's something rooted like 10% in something that's real, but it's been added and has this admixture with 90% bullshit. And part two is one of the reasons why I hate it's a sore subject for me is the real shit is annoying to try and figure out. Kabbalah is an unbelievably dry, very, very enigmatic set of literature. And even internally, we're not entirely sure the best way how it should be studied or anything. And you have all these dipshits out here in Hollywood. I mean, it requires an enormous background even to begin to understand it, and none of these people have it, and they want to tell you what it means. It's the most annoying shit in the world.
Well, if I remember correctly, and I think this is something you mentioned to me at one point, it's only supposed to be like males at a certain age that are supposed to even learn this shit?
Males who are above 40 and are married with children,
Yeah.
But Madonna had a bracelet.
Yeah.
Yeah, she also has a house here, which bothers me.
Yeah.
A house
I
one?
live here and I don't have a house here.
But, I mean, this is the thing, is that classically you're not even supposed to learn about it until you're in your 40s. Doesn't this mean that you're supposed to have life experience under your belt before fucking with this shit?
Yeah, and emotional maturity. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of these people, especially those in Hollywood, are lacking.
Yeah. I love the old saying, you know, you don't have to be bipolar to work here, but it helps.
Yeah. And actually, let's go with crazy to work here as opposed to bipolar, because fuck you, I don't like those words being interchangeable.
True.
Anyway, that's one of my huge pet peeves, because I am bipolar.
Yeah.
But in any case, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the woo shit though, and you know, you ask them, well, who the fuck was Melchizedek, really? And you know, the New Agers have this huge thing that there's supposedly these transcendent masters that have come down, and there was a school started in ancient Egypt by Melchizedek that was teaching all these ancient secrets and crap, and they still are a lot. You know, it's like the Knights Templar, but earlier, in terms of the bullshit lore that goes with it. I mean, I look at it as like, okay, so this is another character that has a fairly insignificant role in the text that somebody decided to grab on and create a whole alternate theology around, more or less. I'll show you my transcendent master if you show me yours. Hang on, let me unbuckle.
Yeah.
It's the belly button, obviously.
And then you have these, especially like in certain times of the year, you'll have certain types of tourists. Mostly between like 22 and 26, like people who took a couple years off of college to go fucking find themselves.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell that means.
Yes, the people that are going to search to find themselves, they don't even know where they are, yet at the same point they think they have all the fucking answers. I know the type.
Yeah, and then they come here because they read some book about Kabbalah, and then they fall victim to a really unfortunate medical condition that's associated with the capital here.
Yeah.
It's called Jerusalem Syndrome, where these people honestly think that God is talking to them. 90% of the time, it's really fucking funny. About 10% of the time, it's absolutely terrifying because sometimes these people honestly think God is telling them to blow shit up.
Yeah.
They'll try.
Is the Jerusalem syndrome similar to Paris syndrome? Which is only suffered by the Japanese?
No, actually, Jerusalem Syndrome is somebody goes to the Holy Land, and they believe that they have some kind of great awakening, so to speak. That they either discover that they are the second coming, Satan, or that God is speaking to them and they're the next fucking Messiah, typically. And it's usually it's like the Messiah Syndrome on steroids.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Because Paris syndrome is kind of like that, but when the Japanese get there, they realize that Paris is a shithole and it's nothing like it is in the movies.
Yeah.
And they get depressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, the people come here, they go to the Capitol, and they think God is telling them to do sometimes really funny things, sometimes obscene things, sometimes violent things. My wife and I actually followed a guy around the old city one time who was telling everybody, walking around, telling everybody that he was a reincarnation of Jesus and everything. And
that's textbook.
Yeah, that really is textbook. And I've actually talked to a couple people like that. Almost all of them, they tend to fall into two groups. They're like either like younger, new agey kind of hippie, yuppie pieces of shit from Berkeley types.
You know, like spirit science.
Yeah, and or they're the like mid-40s, midlife crisis. My wife just left me, and my kids don't want to talk to me, and they're already fundamentalist Christian nut jobs. Like the guy from Australia who came here in 1969 and tried to blow up the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I think he's still sitting in jail here somewhere. And yeah, so yeah, it's these people with delusions are very scary.
Yeah. But you know, it's one of those things. I mean, I have had my colorful history. I spent my time in psych wards, and well deserved, I do have to say, in my case. And part of that came with not having that moral compass in my youth and having to develop one forcibly. But I met several people. I met one person that was absolutely convinced, that believed wholeheartedly that he was the son of the devil. I met 3 Jesuses. Now, their names weren't Jesus, but they sure as hell thought that they were Jesus. Now, what you get actually in Jerusalem is something that puts all these people in the psych ward to shame in terms of the belief.
Yeah.
Now, and that's kind of the scary thing about it. Because, you know, this God isn't necessarily saying, okay, go out and do good things and love each other. It's more along the lines of some of the prophets of old that, you know, you have that one guy that he was according to the story, I believe, spent years going around naked screaming against the aristocracy. Now take that in a modern day when you can blow shit up and you get some really fucked up shit. So he's not just saying oppose it, he's actually trying to do something. It gets fucking scary. I mean, you can't be in that headspace that you think God is literally speaking to you without being more than a little fucked up. And it's worse when you just suddenly one day wake up and decided that you are God. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah. It's actually kind of funny because the questions that, like, everybody gets stopped and, like, frisked by the police here, especially in the capital, relatively regularly. And it's kind of funny, like, around certain pilgrimage seasons, like Christmas or Easter, the set of questions they'll start asking random people actually changes a little bit from, like, you know, okay, like, where are you from? Whatever. They'll actually ask, like, are you hearing voices right now? Like, do you believe that you've been sent here for some type of purpose? And if you say yes, they may detain you for a while, and they may actually take you to the police station and have you evaluated. It's happened a couple times I'm aware of to people I've met.
Yeah.
But they take it very, very seriously.
But at the same point, and unfortunately I'm not remembering whose specific deconversion story it was, but one of our lovely little atheists on here, that during their deconversion process, they were sitting there and they'd been talking back and forth with a professor. I think it might be Qualia Soup, but I'm not sure. But they'd been talking back and forth, corresponding with a professor of world religion. And this guy gets in this talk to them about how the Bible was put together and this whole kind of thing. And the total demeanor, the way in which he was speaking changed from one letter to the next. And the letter that he read, which was back from the professor, was basically saying, I understand the state that you're teetering on the edge of right now, and I'm hoping you're not quite there yet. And I'm hoping I'll be able to get through to you. But the notion of somebody believing that they are the Messiah is something that's common when somebody is deconverting from extremely severe and extreme belief systems.
I saw that.
Yeah, you know the one. You know the one.
Who? His ears are like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff.
But in any case, I'm thinking it's Qualia Soup, but I'm not sure. It might not be. But regardless, and as he's going through and recounting this part of it, that was just like a slap in the face. And like, oh shit, this is a common thing in deconversion from extreme religious views. Oh crap. Because a lot of people don't go through this kind of a phase in deconversion, apparently, that they think that they're the fucking Messiah. I mean, that's some fucked up shit. The fact that this gets into your head so much that, no, all the things that I'm seeing that's wrong with this is because I'm Jesus and I've come back to change them. Oh. Don't go there. Fucked up shit, man. And when you think as I said, when you think you're God, you can do no wrong because you determine the right, which is why I was giving Epi such a hard time ultimately. You know, once you get into this notion that I am God, God by definition cannot do wrong, so whatever I do is... That's just a fucked up scenario, man.
Yeah.
And this is something that's rife within the Christian community. It's less so in other faith-based frameworks. Most faith-based frameworks. I mean, you know, you might have somebody that thinks that they're the actual reincarnation of Buddha, or that the Dalai Lama's the wrong one and they were meant to be the Dalai Lama, or something like that. But, I mean, that's not going to go quite to the same place, I wouldn't think. But, you know, like Muslims and whatnot, there is not going to be any more prophets according to their faith. So how can somebody claim to be the reincarnation, or, you know, Muhammad returned or whatever? You're not going to... I wouldn't think you could get that within their theology as easily as you can within Christianity.
Yet it exists. Believe it or not, there's actually a sect. They're called the Ahmadi movement. They actually believe that, I forget what his name is, this Indian Muslim was a reincarnation of Muhammad. And of course they're horribly persecuted everywhere they go because of it. But
yeah. I'm not surprised it exists, but I just think that this is something that's more common among former Christians. I mean, I certainly can't... I don't know. I mean, I guess a Jew could think that they were the first coming. But I doubt that. I just can't see it. Not with modern-day Judaism, at least.
No.
Yeah, Mormons are fucking. Anyway. Oh, that was the other thing when I was dealing with All for this, not All for His Glory, rather, but what the One Way Apologetics is. He kept trying to. Well, that's kind of like the Mormons, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Everything was like the Mormons with him, so I actually got fed up with it, and I started pulling out Scientology references and saying, "See, you're just like Scientology." Whatever. Shut the fuck up. Oh, I don't care about that. I'm like, yeah, I know you don't, and I don't care about Mormons, and Mormons are as irrelevant as my statement, so shut the fuck up. Oh! Gav, I like that line. Oh, should I repeat it? Let's see now. Why the hell not? Let's see now. You know why God created Mormons? So Christians would know how the Jews feel. Great quote. Ah, good grief. But yeah, it's... I mean, the thing is, I actually, when I was doing my thing a while ago, and I was talking about my personal views pertaining to, you know, what some would call the divine and what some try to call God, what struck me as amusing is there was a guy in the room named Idol Smasher who's, I'm not sure whether he's currently a Jew or is still converting or what, but I know he was in that process relatively recently. And what I was saying was actually validating his beliefs. Well, all the Christians were just going, ah! Because, you know, I'm sitting there promoting the notion that, you know, I went on my long, so to speak, journey to try and figure out what the divine was, and the thing I found at the end of the road, the moment you tried to define it or understand it, the understanding would start slipping from your grasp. And it's something that's, you know, it's completely undefinable. You can't define it. You can't say what it is or what it isn't. You can more say what it isn't than what it is, actually. But at the same point, I don't see this thing as being in any meaningful way sentient. I don't see it in any meaningful way as being self-aware or any of these other things. So by definition, it can't be God, especially not the one promoted by the Christians. And he said, but in terms of my understanding of God, through what I've been taught in by, you know, trying to convert to Judaism, that comports with it perfectly. I'm like, okay.
Well, I mean, people who want to put these very, very strict limit, people who want to claim they know who and what God is, you know, the most detailed self-description, the most detailed self-explanation that God gives in the entire corpus of what you would call the Bible is, I am what I am.
I am that I am, yeah.
I mean, it's that's the most detailed that God ever gets about himself. Then who are you to try and place some type of label? You know, that's kind of the absurdity.
Yeah. Now, of course, the place where it goes off the lines is that I did make the comment that I don't think it has any way to actually communicate directly with any of us. And that's, of course, where it goes away from any of these kind of notions, because the I am that I am wouldn't even... But anyway, this isn't necessarily important. But what I always promote is the idea that, you know, if there is something out there that could be called a god in any way, shape, or form, or anything that could be rightfully even referred to as the divine, you'd have to kind of find it on your own. Because the moment you're following somebody else's dogma, you're not going to understand what it is when you get there. And this is the one thing that the Christians seem to buck the most. Because, you know, it's obviously their book. And I think anyone that's, you know, and this was in my conversation the other day. I even threw out the olive branch of, you know, I mean, I could say it's certainly possible that these people over the course of history that have gone and tried to seek this, what this is, this whatever it is, have sat there and tried to convey this to others. And I don't think the people they've conveyed it to have really understood it. And then all this other junk got kind of piled up on top of it. So whatever truth there has been buried under this pile of dogmatic crap. But maybe some of these ancient spiritual seekers came across something. They found some truth. But then comes the dogma. So we'll never know what that truth was.
Well, an interesting observation, and I'm not the first person to make it, far from it, but you notice all these people that seem to experience some type of revelation from God, at least in the Abrahamic traditions, they're all people who spent a lot of time in the wilderness and the desert. Very often they were sheep herders or some type of goat shepherds or whatever, who spent a lot of times by themselves, you spend a lot of time in isolation, whether what you're perceiving is real or it isn't is almost irrelevant. If you believe that you can hear nature, you can interpret nature as being some type of divine or otherworldly or supernatural being trying to interact with you, then that kind of explains why the earliest formations of what we call Abrahamic religion, starting with Judaism and Christianity and Islam, they started with characters who spent a lot of time outdoors by themselves.
Yeah.
On the psychological level, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is part, I think, where the notion of the only time you can truly hear the divine is when everything else is silent. It's the reason why we can't hear God, so to speak, is because the world around us has become so damn noisy. And I've heard that stated several times. And that might actually have its roots in, some of the earlier people with these messages were, as you say, the shepherds, etc. But if you look at the notion of shamanism within both historic as well as modern context, the people that are the shamans for very different settlements, tribes, etc., are people that have a day job. These are not people that are going around and trying to collect money from people, trying to do fundraisers, people doing revivals, or people that are sitting there trying to write books and market their books. These are people that are part of a settlement. They're basically the sage, the person to go to, and people would go to them with their problems and they'd try to do what they could to help them. They would not get payment for it, maybe a fish or something like this at most, as thanks, but not as payment. And then they'd go about their life, go back to tending their flock or whatever. These were not people that were sitting in, the fucking tabernacle on some fucking throne made of fake gold leaf or some shit like this. These are people that they're just regular people that happen to have this supposed connection to whatever the fuck and live their humble lives. And nowadays it's like, oh yeah, show me the money. The spiritual path is not one paved with coins.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of organized religion, and really to the point that spirituality in general has become organized. You organize something, and sooner or later someone's going to turn it into a business.
Yeah, and I mean one of the things that I've kind of pounded the proverbial drum about is that word, spiritual. Spiritual isn't a bad word. It's not a dirty word. I feel like it's been co-opted by religion. And to the point that when I've made this statement around some people that are of the more zealot leaning, I've had them insist, no, spirituality is completely religious. You can't be spiritual and not be religious. Ugh. Or even more so, they're kind of religious.
Sure you can.
It drives me nuts. I mean, my wife often refers to me as one of the most spiritual people she knows. Well, I'm still a non-believer.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? In reality is that they're not necessarily the same thing. You can be both. You can be neither. You can be one and not the other. But, I mean, there's definitely a defining line between what they are.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but Christianity likes to own everything, so...
Well, most of the Christians that I've dealt with, frankly, are some of what I consider to be the least spiritual people I've ever interacted with, which is kind of sad considering. I mean, there was this one guy that was sitting there, and he was doing the whole mind, body, soul kind of angle with the way he was talking about things. And I tried to break it down and explain to him, well, I mean, if you have your, this notion of the mind, the body, and the soul, and this kind of stuff, well, then the mind is what controls the meat sack, and this soul would essentially be the divine puppeteer. So then he's like, well, what's that? So I then had to explain the notion of the divine puppeteer, that basically you have your brain, you have your body, but then you have this other thing that's effectively behind it, that's just pulling the strings, controlling everything that you do. But what your body is capable of and what you're capable of understanding in this life would be based upon the limitations of the brain. So if your brain's limited, what the divine puppeteer is able to do with that body is going to be altered, because that body can only work from the framework of the body and the brain, and you're going to have problems with the interface, so to speak, between that and this proverbial soul thing. And I'm saying, so, I mean, in light of this, though, if you do something that's sinful based upon what's of the body and the brain, as opposed to what is of the spirit, would the spirit be judged based upon them performing actions in this life based upon limitations of the brain and what's contained therein? And he's just, is this some new agey thing? I'm like, no, this is explaining what the fuck a soul would be if there is such a thing, you moron. And he just couldn't grasp it. And I'm like, yeah, you're spiritual. And you just admitted, and this guy just a minute earlier had told me that as an atheist, I can't understand spiritual things.
A lot of that sounds like parroting. You know,
Yeah.
They're just saying things that they've been told, and they don't really understand what the hell they're saying.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah, Christians, in my mind, in general, tend to be some of the least spiritual people I've ever come across. And when I tried to say that to Dipshit in that conversation the other day, he thought that when I was saying when I was referring to being spiritual, he thought that I was talking about seeing ghosts or some shit. And then told me that what I was saying sounded like Mormonism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think what the irony of all ironies is that within Christianity, the people that, in my experience, ones I've met, the ones that are at least really devout anyway, that are the most spiritual, are the ones the fundies hate. Like the Greek Orthodox and Catholic. Some of the clergy I met, especially in Cleveland, I think were very deeply spiritual people. But they were also, coincidentally, the least judgmental, the most kind, the most generous, and the most open about everything.
Well, my
They were
wife
the exact opposite.
My wife could go on probably for hours talking about her time in England when she went over there, that all the priests were walking around with this dour look, but the nuns had these incredible smiles and this incredible vitality around them that you couldn't look at them and not smile back.
Yeah.
And, there's a difference. These people that are looking around looking sour all the time, that's not spiritual. That infectious smile that just makes your fucking day. That's something that I denote as being more spiritual by nature.
Wow, you bring up a good point, because like a lot of these, Arcane or Rick or some of these other people you run into and things, and when you see them on camera, they're not happy or anything. They're just,
They're pissed.
Yeah, there's something wrong there. It's almost like the funny thing is it's a whole nother creature from the rest of the Christianity.
It's about the blame game, and it's extreme, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, when all that heat started coming down on Nate, and people were accusing him of becoming more and more fundamentalist in his views, and I think some of that was because he was spending so much time around Roy, and I think that
influence for Nate.
yeah. And the thing is, Roy was getting way too much control within those hangouts, and that was reflecting poorly on Nate. And I think that was part of it. And I don't know how much that might have been influenced his speech or what have you, but this is why I did that fireside chat with Nate. I wanted Nate to get a chance to fucking talk, since he got himself away from Roy at that point, and people were still kind of being, you're just as bad as. Well, let's let the guy talk for a while,
Right. I agree. But I mean, that's another thing. Nate's a really nice guy. He really is, especially compared to a lot of them. And I think he honestly, whether or not it always turns out that way is one thing, but I think he honestly is, very sincere and tries to be honest. It doesn't know, his delivery sometimes is a bit off, but that could be anybody. But the reality is that Nate has this idea that Roy is like this really great, nice guy, and Roy has all these people convinced he's this really nice guy. I'll just put it all on the table. Roy's a fucking snake.
I agree.
I think he and Brett went to the same College of Ethics.
Well, no. Let's not go that far with it. But at the same point, in that particular hangout that I was referencing, that I'm sitting there and I'm going on and I'm talking about when I was walking my proverbial spiritual path, what I found at the end and all this kind of stuff. I'm sitting there and I present this whole thing, and this is what I came up with, kind of thing. And Roy, around that time period, because I was not ready to have that discussion. I was worried about how that discussion was going to be received. I was actually horrified at the whole idea. And So I'm sitting there, and now I wasn't going to get into it, but he pulled out that whole "I know everything of the spiritual world" crap that he always pulls out, and I'd had enough of it from Roy, and I'm like, "Fuck you, fuck this, I've had enough. Listen, I've done my own fucking searching. Your God isn't there, motherfucker." Was basically the way that I went about it initially with the startup of it. Excuse me, but the host, Hermine, her daughter was there, and he was talking to her in absolutes like he does with fucking everyone. Like, oh, I have all the answers. I'm the great sage. Come talk to me. And that's what set me off that day. That's why that conversation happened at all. I was planning on doing that as a, kind of private thing with just a few people on my channel, not doing it on somebody else's channel on air for the fucking world to digest. That was not my initial intent.
No,
But he pushed me over the fucking edge, and I'm like, no, fuck you, we're done. And there were a few times he'd try saying that in my presence afterwards, and I'm like, do you really want to go down that road with me again? And he'd usually back the fuck down. Except for when he was on air on Nate's channel and knew he had, the controls and all this other shit, and then he'd sit there and try different argument techniques, which he should have known weren't going to fucking work. But he tries to talk with this incredible air of authority, like God is speaking to him directly and has given him personally all the answers. Makes you want to beat him upside the head and neck, I swear.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
I've known too many people like that, unfortunately.
The thing is, I don't think any of the I don't think King David would have claimed to know everything of God. I don't think Saul would have, and these are people that supposedly interacted with him regularly. I don't think they would have claimed to know God's mind as well as Roy does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they want to. They're always trying to come up with absolute this, absolute that. And everything they say is absolutes, which it's not that way. It's not black or white. There's a lot of variation there, but they cannot or will not look at things that way.
Will not.
The difference between God and Roy is that God doesn't think he's Roy.
Nice.
Cute. I love that. Oh, hey, one of the shufflers actually is a viewer now. If you got the link, you should be one of the people on the shuffle list, so you should be able to come in. You should have the link in theory. Anyway, feel free to join us if you'd like, because this is a very limited invite to view.
One of my biggest arguments with Roy that I ever had, it wasn't even about spiritual or religious crap. It was his absolutely nonsensical insistence that alcohol and drug addiction are not real. They're a choice that the addicted person can simply choose to opt out of at any time, and they're choosing to sin by choosing to continue to do the heroin or the alcohol. And I very nearly reached through my speaker, clear the way to California, and choked him through his own fucking phone.
Yeah.
How can somebody even consider tying in that stupid homosexual argument?
Hang on. Wait. Just hang on a second. I want to add one other thing to this, which is that he also believes that through asking you 3 questions, he can know everything about you, because this will tell him everything about your personality and your character.
Oh, what a fucking twat.
Yeah.
He also buys into the law of attraction.
Okay, he's a super twat.
Can I just ask a question, Heathens? Do you know what the 3 questions are that Roy asks?
I don't remember them. I do not remember them. But it's
I
based
remember
upon...
He did that shit to me, and he was wrong like 80% of the time. He's like, so you are this? I was like, no. And then you are this? No, not at all.
Well, obviously, you're lying.
No, there's no way.
Wait. He pulled the same shit with me, and he added a 4th question after I gave my honest appraisal of each of his things, which were fucking wrong. And he then said, okay, so people that are skeptical of these tests, how willing do you think they are to lie as the result of this? And he was asking that to the room. I'm like, fuck you. I offered to do an honest test of this to try and settle the argument in here, and it failed. Deal with it.
Oh, that's kind of your fault.
But yes, it must be because I'm skeptical. I'm like, no, I gave honest answers. I do not refuse honest questions with an honest answer.
Right. Well, he basically did the same thing to me because like he asked me his 3 bullshit questions, and then he had like this other like 10 question thing he had me do later that same day. He's like, "Well, I know this about you." I was like, "Well, you're wrong." And it was very basic stuff like about like how many brothers and so he's like, "I guess you have like an older brother who was a very strong influence." It's like, "I don't have any brothers. There's just me and my sister. So fuck off and die." But and then he basically accused me of the same thing. He's like, "Well, you probably maybe misrepresented your answers a little bit while answering me." I was like, "No, your fucking test is bunk, dude."
Oh yeah, and the questions were on the lines of what's your favorite color, this, or this.
What's the airspeed velocity of a unladen swallow? I mean,
I mean, there. It was like, what's your if you had to choose between a circle, a square, or a triangle, which would you choose? This was the level of questions he was asking.
That's bullshit even on a fundamental psychological level.
Yeah.
Holy
shit. Well, that's the problem. Not only is
Eden, what's the current price of tea in China?
$5.42. I don't fucking know.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, see what that means there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just another thing about Roy. The whole religious, crap where he's so arrogant about it and so uppity about it is one thing. He seems to think that he should have like this honorary degree in fucking psychology. He's always trying to analyze people, and he thinks he's like this great relationship expert. It's like, dude, you've been in a failed marriage, and your only children refuse to talk to you.
Well,
we're not a
learn from
relationship.
his example. Look what he did wrong.
No fucking wonder he acts like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
His kids are both in their 20s. He hasn't seen them in over a decade or spoken to them.
Let's see now.
Fucking schmuck.
I was in maybe just a few hangouts with him and had a little bit of back and forth with him, but I'm like, no, I don't want to be around this man no more, because he's not, as you know, he's not honest. Questions he asks you, they're loaded, or they don't make no sense. And I never even got as far as the questions he asked y'all about, well, what's this, and this, and I can tell everything about you. I wasn't around him that long. Yay.
Yeah. Talk about a presuppositionalist.
Actually, China's stock market may be booming, and its house prices soaring, but the hottest investment in the country today comes in the shape of a small, compressed cake that smells vaguely earthly and is wrapped in paper. Purer tea, a strong aromatic brew from the remote southwestern province of Yunnan, has long been prized in China for its medicinal qualities. Now, instead of drinking it, millions are hoarding it, at the price just jumped over 50 cents last year.
What was that?
Sorry, 50%. Apparently, it's considered to age with time, and in 2005, 500 grams of 64-year-old pure tea sold at auction for 1 million yuan.
Oh, now we do know what that has to do with the price of tea in China.
Sorry, I was just like, I wonder what happens if you Google that.
What's the price of tea in China? There you go.
Yeah, depends on how old it is.
Yeah, and the variety, and where you got it.
Yeah.
And how special it is to you, whether or not you walked up a mountain to buy it, and then discovered you could have bought it at the bottom for half the price.
And people are weird.
That's hilarious. It's
By the way, I got my
actually more. This tea is more valuable than gold in China. That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. It's a tulip.
Well, apparently, if you have the right tea, the price of tea in China is actually not as irrelevant as we think.
Yeah. But it's a tulip.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, there's a reason why I removed Roy. Actually, I technically didn't remove him completely from the list. I put him from the somewhat reasonable people I could have a conversation with to the obnoxious asshole group. Because, yeah, that kind of binary thinking, I think, is dangerous, quite frankly.
It's extremely.
But, he knows all things spiritual.
Hmm.
And knows everything about heaven. I'm like, okay, then describe it to me. Describe this other world to me. Well, there's angels and there's demons, and I said, no, there aren't either. Technically, they'd all be demons because demon by definition is anything from the outside.
Yep.
What? Well, no, there are angels. There aren't any angels. No, those are technically demons too. What? Unless you want to go back to the classical Greek view, which comes from a pagan belief in which the word daemon, D-E-A-M-O-N, is technically the inborn soul is passed down from the mother. So unless you're talking from that framework, but an earlier framework would be anything that's from a reality outside other than our own, so fuck off. It's just a synonym for a spirit.
Yeah.
Fucking tool. Roy just needs an asshole stamp on his forehead. Then everything would be right in the world.
Are you suggesting he go teabagging?
No.
So we may enjoy it.
Anyway, the kicker is I can sit there and I can go through the thought experiment. You know, what would happen if this God character was real? And Roy passes, and he finds himself up in, before the proverbial pearly gates. And standing in front of him is, well, let's not go St. Peter. Let's claim that Jesus is standing there. And he sits there and he gets to the front of the line, and Jesus is like, "Oh, you who keeps claiming that you knew everything that I wanted and said, and claim that you knew everything about my father. Fuck yourself. I don't think he's getting in. You have led more people astray than this devil character you keep talking about. Who, by the way, By the way, this guy next to me, that'd be the devil. He's still a loyal servant. Go fuck yourself. You should have listened to the Jews."
What's the first commandment? Thou shalt not have any other gods before me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Gav. Roy is the only person I know of that would argue with God as to who God is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
He claimed it was an apple and oranges discussion or some shit.
Huh?
He'd claim to be having an apple conversation and them answering oranges.
Oh,
Yeah, that was one of his other things I noticed was he wants you to answer all his questions, but when you put stuff to him and he don't want to answer, to go there, he'll go pass.
Yeah.
The arrogant piece of shit. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
But not only that, but you have to answer with his questions with yes or no, basically, with binary answers.
Yeah, and the thing is, with that, you actually have to set rules before you can gain conversation with people like that. You have to say, if I'm going to have a conversation with you.
Well, I mean, no. The way he starts these conversations is, well, before we even have a conversation, do you start with God or do you start with not God? Now, I don't know anyone that answers that question with the binary. Almost everyone I know is, well, what do you mean by God? That's almost everyone's initial response. And no, you have to answer one or the other. Bullshit, I do.
I say then you're violating the rules of normal conversation.
This is Roy.
Oh, fuck Roy. I don't know Roy. I actually don't. I haven't heard him before. It sounds like someone I would say, fuck Roy.
You are truly blessed, then.
I'm too busy watching Bernie Sanders be awesome.
I have to say, though, being somebody that recently had a stroke, and this is somebody in response to something that nobody out there that's going to watch this will actually see because it's just in here right now. Having had a stroke, I think the moment after having the stroke, Roy might have made some sense. But I didn't put it to the test.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only because my cognitive processes were not working properly enough to be able to follow a fucking conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, apparently,
it takes a stroke for me to answer things in a binary.
Yeah. My favorite part of Bernie is Jewish humor.
No. I didn't know that. I like Bernie.
That's sarcasm.
Yeah. I actually like Bernie, but anyway. So far, so good, at least. Granted, I'm a little bit concerned about some of the policies he's proposing based on... it doesn't matter. But regardless... that's true of anyone. I just think that he's the least of all evils running.
Well, what policies concern you?
I love the idea of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but I think it might lead to hyperinflation.
Well, it depends. If the companies
I said I'm concerned about some of the policies. That's the concern.
Yeah.
Well, I actually, the thing with raising the minimum wage, the hyperinflation concern, it's not, $15 an hour isn't enough to really say people can afford a lot, or say that people can afford way more or higher prices.
A friend of mine that studied economics years ago actually indicated that there is a good chance that it could lead to hyperinflation. That there are certain trends that go in terms of finances and what have you, and when you raise the income level, generally the cost of things raise to accommodate that, so that the cost of things tends to be based more along a certain lines of how much money people tend to be able to afford to pay. And his concern is that if you're making more, then they'll feel like they can charge more for quite a number of things. So yeah.
Well, the other side of that is that there are more customers. So the thing that businesses is concerned about is profits.
Hang on though. We have to worry about more than that. We have to worry about things like rent and housing costs and this kind of stuff as well. Now, in terms of rent, it used to be back in my father's day that you weren't supposed to be paying more than a quarter of your income as rent. Well, if that quarter of your income is higher, they will be able to charge more because they'll be still scaling it towards that. Now, in terms of rent, there's a good chance that if they expect people to have more income, they will feel that they can charge them more to live there. And rent is one of the biggest expenses that most people have.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a third, and
it used to be a quarter.
Yeah.
Then it went to a third, and now it's actually at a half in Texas.
And boom, when you said that if you pay people more, there'll be more customers. Yeah, but then you get into a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
You can't produce enough now to satisfy the supply.
So you have to
charge
charge more
because of the demand. Or sorry, to satisfy your demand, so your supply line isn't there, so your price goes up.
And this is one of the things that powers the inflation. Yeah.
And guess what else you're doing? You're taking somebody who let's say your minimum wage is $10 and you have someone who's making $20 an hour. By raising the minimum wage, you actually are also lowering the other person's wage. Because you're reducing the gap in there.
Well,
when you look at when the inflation comes in.
It happens though when the gaps are too far apart.
Yeah.
Well, with that too, for the majority of the time when the minimum wage was raised, other wages increased. So the minimum wage doesn't affect one wage; it affects all wages.
Take care.
Take care. Good to have you as always.
It's good to be here.
I wish Epi came back. I was actually having some fun with that. I think I was terrifying everyone else, but that's okay too.
I just hope he didn't get pissy and
I don't know. I mean, usually it's just that he has something to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I give him that. I mean, there are a couple times that I think he might have rage quit or gotten frustrated, but this didn't strike me as one of them.
Oh yeah, I didn't think so either.
That tends to be more so when he's dealing with dogmatic Christians and has just had enough of listening to them.
Yeah.
But I know that there have been times that I've frustrated him as well. But you know, it never seems to be he's hit that wall of, well, shit, they're starting to make points, so I'm bailing. It never strikes me as that with him. Especially because I've gone hours and hours with him on certain topics. And this was getting close to being a rehash, so if it did start going down that road and he started getting frustrated, that's bad. But, I mean, in my mind, though, there's a lot of things that are completely incoherent about the Christian notion of the divine. And, yeah, this whole idea of it must be good, it's only good. You know, there are ways that I can see to get around that. The Christians don't use any of them. I mean, this whole notion that, well, you know, God can only do things that are logically possible. Actually, he should be able to do things that defy human logic.
Well, he's supposed to, isn't he? Especially since he's outside space and time.
But there is a workaround for that, which I've actually posited before, which is kind of simple, really. You know, think of it as being like a video game designer in terms of the act of creation. You put this system into place. If you start bending the rules too much, you will break it. So you have to act in concordance to the rules that you set for yourself to operate within the system.
And then you
so you still have him setting the rules, but he can't break his own rules at that point. And then then I'm like, okay, this kind of squares that. This, as far as I'm concerned, it puts a pretty good-sized patch, just sews a patch onto this problem of evil. It's not necessarily a perfect solution, but at the same point, it kind of explains the why. And that's really the thing, it's the why. It's the system was put into place. If he were to sit there and start fucking with shit, he'd break the system and have to start all over, and he'd essentially be undoing all creation by doing so. You can go with that. That works. It's a good patch for the problem of evil, as far as I'm concerned. But you posit that to Christians, and no, because God is... Well, what's the matter with it? And I've never gotten a coherent answer to that. I don't know.
It's the whole God argument just kind of...
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, the part of the reason why I do this is, I'm saying, okay, your theology doesn't make much fucking sense to me. I don't think it's coherent. How about if we look at it this way? Might that make some sense? Maybe this will work, or maybe that'll work. Now, it changes some of the viewpoints pertaining to these, God notions and what have you. It's like, well, yeah, sure, he can still be technically all-powerful, but he's limited. Well, no, you can't limit God. I'm like, what? Well, because miracles happen. They really don't. I mean, you can say that they once did, but maybe not all the rules were in place back then. I mean, you could even stretch it to that, and I'd be like, okay, fine, I might give you a little bit in terms of that, but, I'll give you some rope. Just keep hanging yourself. And that's the thing is, it's like, okay, well, here's a rope that will break when you try to hang yourself. Use this one when you go to the gallows. No, I want this good sturdy rope. Huh? Craziness. Yeah.
Cake and eat it too.
Here's a box. My God fits in this box. Yeah. Yeah.
Chimney box.
Now, where did I go with the analogy in which, the boxes contains your beliefs pertaining to it, and yeah, but...
Hey, heathens, I remember seeing a play where, I can't remember all of it, but it did relate to a mail-order god that came in a box.
Ooh. There was actually, there was a video years ago that I can't find anymore that was basically religion in a box. And it was actually really kind of fun. It was a really cute little video, but now it's buried on the tube somewhere. Can't find it anymore, but it was actually a great little parody thing. It was a parody of one of these infomercials.
Damn fundy Christians. burying all the good stuff on YouTube with their crap.
Yeah, well, it's actually more the cat videos that bury everything, I think. And PewDiePie.
No, the
well,
cat
he does make a video every day, so...
The cat videos don't tend to bury things, because they usually get labeled under cat.
Oh, well, no, I'm just saying the volume of videos that they get, and picking on the cat videos being so, constant.
We should create a national day, and that's like upload a cat video day.
Ugh, no.
Do you remember who that God in a box was done by?
No, I don't, dude. This was, done 7 years ago, roughly. This was around when I was first on here. It was my first year here, so this was around 2008. I actually had grabbed a snippet from it for one of my videos years and years ago. I'm not even sure the video still exists. But yeah, this was from ages ago. The account might not even be there anymore. Who the fuck knows? But this was before I started watching Edward Current to put things into some perspective.
Oh wow, that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it was before Edward Current was a thing. Long before frickin' Thundernuts started making videos.
Wow, that is a long time ago. That's like, what, 2008-ish?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember Thunderfoot's second video, which was in 2008. His first came out a little bit before that, but I never watched his first one. I watched his second, which actually referenced Scientology, which is why it was brought to my attention, which is why I noticed that little shithead to begin with. Back then, he had about 2,000 subscribers at topmost.
Yeah.
He didn't break 10,000 until he started fighting with Sean.
Yeah, and a lot of that seemed just like they're trying to one-up each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how he got most of his initial following, was just responding to Venom Fang.
Yeah, which he was bigger than Thunderfoot at the time.
Yeah, he was. Thunderfoot had, I think, he had just broken 10,000, and Venom Fang had, I think, 14,000 at the time.
Yeah.
I remember this shit. It was a long fucking time ago, but I remember this shit. And the people that were following Venom Fang were very active. And the people that followed Thunder at that point were fairly active. Not quite as active as Venom's followers, but Venom's followers were nutters. And I believe, wasn't one of Venom Fang's followers that was the murderer that killed that girl or something? Or was it a girl? I don't remember.
What? Explain again.
You remember the murder? It was one of the guys, I think was a follower of Venom Fang X or something like that, that ended up meeting another YouTuber on offline and killing them or something like that.
I do not remember.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty intense.
Oh yeah, it was one of these situations that this person, had gotten in some arguments with some people, and went and basically hunted them down and fucking killed them, and then committed suicide.
Okay, I know it's been a long time ago, nobody here can remember, but I'd want something more than just a story.
Well, this is why I started changing my message back in the day, because I had been being much more aggressive, and I've mentioned this before, and there have been some people that remember it that know more than I did, because I heard about it like way third party.
Yeah.
But there was a discussion I had. It should be one of the shuffles is playing on the 18-day playlist that this was referenced more. But yeah, there was an instance of murder-suicide with people that were actually in the community. And there was more to it than simply the argument. This wasn't just like, they disagreed with me on the internet, so I killed them. There was, I think it was like a guy and a girl in rejection or something. I don't really remember the story.
Okay.
But regardless,
it's just the way it's coming across right now, the way you're telling it sounds like copy pasta.
It's not. Well, the thing is, I can understand that it might sound like copy pasta, but this was something that at the time was a big deal, and was what taught a lot of people back in the day that there can be real-world consequences for what you say online. And it's kind of important to realize that there might be somebody unstable out there in your audience.
Absolutely.
That might do something stupid, and this is something that I've banged the drums on about because, shit happens sometimes. I mean, granted, the last time I referenced this, it was around the time that whole thing with Fiona and her son was going on, that her son got attacked by somebody that just happened to watch one of Jay Boo's videos and,
No. That stuff with Fiona, are we live? Or will it go live?
We're live. We are live.
All right, I'll explain later.
But the thing is, what happened was, from the story as I heard it, and I'm not going to get into the fight on it at this point, is that some kid that lived in the same community watched a video that Jason Burns put up and then wasn't asked to her son. Not based on anything that Jason Burns even said necessarily, but just because of, well, in some ways it was because of what he said. Because he said that this woman was stalking him, so this kid was confronting her son, claiming that his mother was a stalker and this kind of stuff, which led to an assault. But there can be. But the point is, there can potentially be real-world consequences when you say stupid shit. So be careful what the fuck you say.
Well, I mean, we all know, we've all seen the TV specials about people who go ape shit, and they kill their neighbor. Like that guy in one of the Carolinas who shot his 3 neighbors over a parking dispute. What makes you think that people like that don't exist on the internet?
It's like all that time with Bill O'Reilly sitting there saying, Tiller, the baby killer, somebody needs to take this son of a bitch out. And then, lo and behold, when somebody did take him out, he's like, oh, this had nothing to do with what I said.
Yeah.
Don't think you might have brought Tiller to his attention, and all that stuff about him being a baby murderer might have incited him? Really? Good night.
Yeah. That's the fundamental principle of mob rule, is that people will do something.
And that's why Charles Manson will never get parole, even though he's been eligible for it.
Yeah.
They keep denying him. Because the day you let him out, you fill the cell with the guy who killed Charles Manson.
Yeah, pretty much. But, I mean, this is kind of the thing, you know? It's just... I mean, there are potential consequences to things we say and do online. And, you know, sometimes they're very unexpected. And it's not like people intend for these things to happen, but they can, and we need to be aware of that at times.
Well, someone going out and killing someone else over what happened online is a fairly drastic example. I think a more common example that we're all familiar with is maybe someone losing their job over something like a Facebook post or, you know, something.
Yeah, that's certainly much more common, but, you know, I'm taking, of course, the most drastic example I'm aware of, which was, it was a thing, but, you know, this was background about, I think, 2009. I think Jordy knows more about it. I don't remember. I think it might have been Jordy I was talking to about it. I wonder if Jordy's around.
Well, things you say and do, well, your influence over others can have real-world consequences, and I think a perfect example of that would be Charles Manson.
Yeah.
Because, you know, technically the guy didn't actually kill anyone. He basically brainwashed other people into doing it.
You don't even have to brainwash to get people to do things. All you have to do is deem important to them.
Right.
The leader says, you know,
Yeah.
that sarin gas bombing that was done.
The leader is good. The leader is great. The leader is good. The leader is great.
That sarin gas attack that was done in Japan a number of years back was done under the actual instruction of a guru that claimed that he'd had his great awakening through yoga and basically thought he was the fucking messiah. There's that guy that's, what's it referred to, the guru of Bling or whatever, that recently had 400 of his followers castrate themselves because he had them believing that that was how they could get to heaven, basically.
Yeah.
Well, what about the guy that was in charge of the Heaven's Gate?
Yeah. Applewhite. Yeah.
He had castration. He had castration too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many he went through with it. I'm not sure how many others went through with it.
Yeah, and then there was the whole suicide because they believed that that was the way to get to the Hellbot comic when it flew by so they could be with Jesus.
Yeah, why didn't they use a spaceship?
Yeah.
The interesting thing is it could be just as simple as, hey, could you do me a favor?
Yeah.
It's not all that uncommon either. Like, you know, people think like it's like this huge feat to get someone else to do a horrible thing on your behalf. It's really not. Like, it's very, very common.
No.
Like you'll
so
see
simple.
I mean, and you see like these. I watch a lot of those like forensic files, stuff like that. How many times does the murderer have an accomplice like where he met like an old high school friend and he's like, "Oh, hey, want to go rape and kill this girl with me?" And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, sure."
Yeah, for old time's sake. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Come on, let's just be friends. Let's go kill this person over here. Come on. If you're a real friend, you would do it. If you're a real friend, you would murder this person. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, people have got to realize that life does not work like television.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to ruin a lot of people's grasp on reality.
I know.
Like in the Matrix, most of these people aren't ready to be unplugged.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, that's why I think the divorce rate is so high. People base their marriage on a Hollywood movie they saw when they were fucking 14 years old, and they wonder why it's not actually like that.
Or I hate to say it, princesses for girls.
Yeah.
And girls are just as violent as boys. Like, I remember when I was growing up, my mom would smack me across the face. My dad would smack me across my ass. So, you know, there's no difference as far as who's going to abuse a child. It matters just where they're going to hit you.
So are you saying you were Snow White and your mother was trying to make you uglier than she was?
No, what I'm saying is Dad hit hard enough to leave marks. That's why he slapped him on the ass, so he puts pants on.
Well, there was only one time he actually left bruises.
Right, then you get put clothes on, no one sees him. He slaps you in the face, he leaves a burn. Leaves a mark everyone can see.
Yep. Moms are dumber about abuse.
No, because they're the one who takes you to the hospital and says you fell down the stairs.
Well, that too.
Or the dog punched you.
Or the dog.
Well, boom, don't laugh. My cat smacked me in the face and my eyelid was drooping when I looked in the mirror.
That's a bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Droopy dog. Grass.
Grass.
Oh, my. I think I ate too many French fries.
Oh, you can never eat too many French fries.
As a diabetic, you can.
Oh. Then just eat one less than too many.
That's very much.
But was it poutine, though?
Hmm?
Was it poutine?
Hell no. It was savory fries.
Oh.
I wish it was poutine, good poutine, but I'm not in Quebec. Thankfully.
The secret is the cheese curd.
It's the blending of the gravies. Yay for needles. It's just a little prick. That's what she said. A lot of dead air. Not good. They're being boring.
Well,
the
the thing about a lot of the benefits and the social structure of taking care of the people has to do with lowering stress. The less stressed people are about whether if something happens or if something occurs, if something goes wrong, the less likely something will go wrong.
Well, stress is and let's just say call it anxiety, because stress is kind of anxious energy, but anxiety is so important in our health. How it affects our body, it can even affect our cells. It will make us be stupid. It will, yeah.
What I'm saying is that the less anxiety and stress that you have, the more likely you're going to be able to put up with more work, the more you're going to be able to accomplish in terms of getting the job that the worker wants you to do. The ability to not have to worry about what's going to happen with my kids, what's going to happen with that and this and that, and just focus on your job.
What? Sorry, Boom, that was a bit of a word salad.
Well, if you're stressed about everything else except your work, how are you going to focus on your job? I had a hard enough time trying to keep up with my work while I was focused on everything else.
You got to know what to focus on and what not to focus on.
Yeah, but you're talking about millions of people who trying to figure out how am I going to pay these bills.
Yeah, you pay those bills by going to work and doing your job.
Yeah, but if you can't afford, if going to work doesn't give you enough money to do that, how are you going?
Then you keep going to work, and while you're doing that, you look either for a job with more money or a way to make more money.
That's not always an option, though.
Then you keep going to work.
And so you end up in a cycle of never-ending.
Well, well, how old are you now, Boom? You said you're 24?
Yes.
Yeah, there will be a point in your life when you realize you make no money. It's kind of weird to understand, but there will come a point in your life where you're working and you make no money. And then later in life, you will start making money again.
If you can show me what that means.
Basically, when you're younger, like in your 20s, you have very few bills, and unless you got like stupid school loans.
Oh, I have a bunch of loans.
Okay. Aside from that, basically your money's free. You can do whatever you want with it. In your 30s, you should be saving money, but most people wind up just blowing it, waiting until they have more money to save. By your 40s, assuming you've done things like bought a house and a car, and you have a basic life going, you have no money because all your money is going towards paying all those things.
That sounds like a stereotype, sorry.
Well, it doesn't work out for everybody the same way.
Nobody.
And then later in life, boom, in your 60s is when you have money again. Because the house is now paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what money you do have today is generating an income for you.
Well, owning a house does certainly save a fuck ton of money. Yeah. Except for the money that you spend on repairs of the fucking house. So.
Right. So really, it's here or there.
Yeah. I mean, the maintenance costs can be problematic, but it usually comes in spurts.
Yeah.
But, you know, it gives you the opportunity to save up so you can then pay the money to have the repairs done.
As long as they don't all come at the same time.
Yeah.
Like roof, driveway, and furnace.
Yeah.
As long as life doesn't throw you curveballs.
I wonder who the one viewer is. Oh, well.
It's not me this time.
I don't know. It's somebody on my list. Gotta be. It's funny looking over there and seeing 13. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm 13 again. Yeah.
Grow up, will you? No.
Yeah, not used to it. I should have done it as one fucking word, apparently, but oh well. Too late now. Hindsight is hindsight. Hey, we have 0 viewers on the 18-day thing, as usual. Yeah, I could really give a shit. Yeah, anyway. How long have we been running this fucking shindig? About 2.5 hours for my eyes.
I just had a little laugh over a comment. Somebody said to G-Man, don't make it about you.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
No shit.
You want to reread that? You want to reread what you typed there? This is G-Man we're talking about.
Yeah. Does anyone else exist within his reality?
Oh, of course. Only the ones who agree with him.
Yeah. Let's see now. Take a look at my other accounts. I have so many. I really fucking do. It's hilarious. Oh. I've been invited to some off-air thing that's not being recorded. That's nice. We get a response on one of the Kundalini Yoga ones.
Is that like a noodle or a pasta?
Hmm.
Kind of like a small dumpling?
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's a response to something that I said on one of the spirit science things. And it might be Christina watching, actually. It's somebody.
She seems to be around. She's also...
She's at work.
Yeah, she's also in that comment thread with G-Man, so...
Oh, okay. Yeah,
by the way, speaking of spirit science, I haven't watched this stuff in a while.
He hasn't put anything new up in ages.
I know, but I haven't
something out like every 6 months, and yeah.
I haven't watched it in ages either.
Mm-hmm. Cool Hard Logic was after him on something today. Or yesterday, I can't quite remember.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, same old, same old. Oh, and look, more subscribers to the old channel. What a shock. Good grief. Anyway, seeing as I've pretty much wound down and the number of participants has dropped, I'm going to take this online in a couple moments to the person who actually sat there and viewed the good portion of this. Whoever you are, I know you've got to be on my standard invite list. Thank you for watching. And this will probably be aired at some point after that 18-day atrocity is over. that's when it'll be aired properly. And
Heathens.
this may or may not be used as part of the snare I'm planning on setting for some of these little script kiddies.
What's his Debunker Showdown video?
Debunker Showdown?
It's about a year old.
Is that one of mine?
No, this is Spirit Sciences.
Oh, Mortimer made a video in response to him, and some people were criticizing him for refusing to answer it and claiming that it could hurt his channel if he didn't, so he finally decided to come down from his fucking cloud and respond to it. And it is the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, the thumbnail is like a whole bunch of people sitting in this Coliseum, and they're like in the gladiatorial pit here.
Yeah, I'm seriously thinking about having somebody redo one small part of that video in which it shows, them sitting there ready to fight and this kind of thing, and has him done up like Avatar: The Last fucking Airbender, and has Mortimer with a mace. And I'm thinking about having a squirrel with big nasty teeth put over where it has the mace shots and re-edited for fun.
No, you have to use the music from Star Trek when Kirk and Spock fought.
Oh, cheaters.
When they were pitted against
Actually, he didn't use any. No, he claimed that if Mortimer came honest questions and he was allowed to just answer those questions, then surely they'd come to a simple understanding. It's like, no, I don't think so. Anyway, at that note, we are going offline now, and thanks for watching, and Harry's a great one.